Thank you very much, and to all the World Human Forum team for this very generous invitation. It's amazing to be here. What I wanted to say briefly, and I will try and keep this brief, I know people are getting hungry for their dinner, is that I wanted to ponder a little bit something that was mentioned earlier in the afternoon, which was about the importance of storytelling. And I hope I'll be able to hit some notes or pick up some notes from our discussions over the last 2 days. So as some of you may know, I want to talk a little bit about the myth, the stories that are told about the founding of Delos, the history of this island. So as some of you may know, the myth goes that the goddess Leto was impregnated by Zeus. She was heavily pregnant and looking for somewhere where she could rest and give birth. But Hera, Zeus's wife, was furious with her for sleeping with her husband. And so she extremely vindictively went around and forbade every place on earth to welcome poor Leto. And she also set up her son, Ares, the god of war, to keep an eye out for any place that would receive the goddess Leto and allow her to give birth. So poor Leto was wandering all around the Greek world, and we have accounts where she goes from place to place, and every place she stops says, no, move on, the goddess Hera forbids me to let you give birth here. So she's desperate. But she finally alights on an inconspicuous, rocky little island, which has a peculiarity. It's a wandering island. It's not fixed in place. So it's mobile all around the Aegean Sea. The name of the island is Asteria. And I'd like you to think about that and hold it in your minds for the moment. The name means starry place, starry island, Asteria. That's the only place in the world that is not afraid to stand up to the goddess Hera and to risk her anger. And Asteria, the little rocky wandering island, allows the poor goddess Leto to rest. And she gives birth on Asteria to the twins, Apollo, god of the sun, and Artemis, goddess of the moon. In celebration and in thanks for Asteria, the island's cooperation, the island becomes fixed in place. It becomes rooted. It stops wandering. It becomes fixed in place in a very important place at the center of the Cyclades Islands, that circle. It's said to be fixed like the hearth that is at the center of the Cyclades Islands, which dance around the island of Asteria like a chorus of dancers. And also the island Asteria is given a new name, Delos, the conspicuous island. So it's honored for being the birthplace of Artemis and Apollo. Now, soon after that, the cult of Apollo begins, and the myth tells us that the very first people to bring gifts in honor of the god Apollo here in the sanctuary where we were earlier were the Hyperboreans, a people who come from the land Hyperboreas, the land that is above the north wind. So very, very far to the north. Let's imagine the Arctic Circle. These people were the first, we are told by myth, to bring offerings to Apollo, the sun god, here on the island of Delos. The Hyperboreans inhabit an island called Mheallaigh, which is very, very far north in the Arctic Circle. We're told that it's so far north, it's close to the moon. So close to the moon that the Hyperboreans can actually see individual earthy features on the surface of the moon. Every 19 years after that event, Apollo, the sun god, leaves his home in Delos and goes to the far north to Mheallaigh to visit the Hyperboreans and share a festival with them. So there is forevermore this connection between the center of the Mediterranean world, the center of the Cycladic Islands, Delos, here, and this remote island at the edges of the world in the north. The 19 years is significant. Apollo is the sun god, Helixoia is next to the moon, and the 19-year cycle is the metonic cycle, which is an astronomical cycle which aligns the solar and the lunar cycles. So what can we, if stories have meanings, what might we extrapolate from these myths? Well, I think it has a lot to tell us, or it speaks a lot to many of the themes that came up over the last few days. First of all, the myth of Asteria, the wandering island, tells us about a world that's in flux. It's still dynamic. It's still being created. Leto's hapless wanderings all over the Greek world is a story of mapping out of the Greek world. And then finally, the fixing of Delos is a story about settlement, a theme that came up a few times throughout this conference. Delos, in other words, has an enormous cosmographical significance. It's the home of the gods of the sun and the moon. It represents a center, the hearth at the center of the Cycladic Islands. But it's a center that is also connected with the edges of the world, the Hyperboreans in the far north. So it's about centrality, but connectivity as well. It's about the structure of the cosmos, the beautiful order of the world. So I think it's particularly fitting that in thinking about architecture, we have gathered here on this cosmographical island. This link between the Earth and the moon in the far north is something that finds different expression in another story from a later period by an author named Lucian, Lucian of Samosata. And Lucian wrote a dialogue in the 2nd century CE under the Roman Empire, a dialogue called the Icaromenippus, where the hero Menippus leaves the earth and flies to the moon. So in fact, the first lunar landing wasn't on the 20th of July, 1969. It was in the imagination from Lucian, this Greek writer's pen in the late 2nd century CE. But the first thing that Menippus does when he reaches the moon is to look back on the world he has left. So we've been talking about photographs like Earthrise or the blue marble, or from even farther afield, from the edges of our solar system, the famous pale blue dot that was taken in 1990, February 14th, 1990. Or the Cassini photograph, The Day the Earth Smiled, I think in 2008, where we all looked up and our whole planet was looking towards Saturn and a photo was taken. All of these are images of our world from remote distances. But the idea of taking a photographic image of our world has ancient precedent in the Greek imagination. It's what Menippus did in Lucian's imagination as soon as he reached the moon in the 2nd century CE. He looked back at our world, and I will read you a short passage which relates what he saw, what he contemplated as he looked at the whole of the earth and took it all in one eye shot. So this is Menippus speaking. He says, "Most of all, I was overcome with laughter at those who were quarreling over land boundaries and those who prided themselves for farming the plain of Sicyon or owning 1,000 yards of land around Oinui at Marathon or at Akarnai. Because at that moment in time, from my vantage point above on the moon, the entirety of Greece looked to me no bigger than 4 fingers' breadth. So I reflected how little was left for those wealthy men to pride themselves on. For it seemed to me that even the man with the most acreage was farming no more than a single Epicurean atom. Looking towards the Peloponnesus and seeing there the territory of Kynoria, I recalled how many Argives and Spartans had fallen in one single day over such a meagre patch of land, no broader than an Egyptian bean. And wherever I caught sight of someone preening himself on his gold because he owned 8 rings and 4 cups, I laughed out loud at him, for the whole of Pangaeum, along with its mines, was the size of a mere millet seed. I think that's an extraordinary passage that speaks to us still across the centuries. Carl Sagan, whether he knew it or not, in his famous 1994 lecture, Pale Blue Dot, echoed many of precisely these themes. Carl Sagan had seen the photo of our Earth, which was no more than a pixel on that famous photograph. Lucian, this Greek writer from the ancient past, had only imagined what thoughts would occur to him if he were to go to the moon and think what he would see. What I hope this short talk illustrates is the vitality of stories, whether they are stories we tell now or the stories from the ancient past, to travel across time and speak to us and to speak to our future even today. Thank you very much. Ευχαριστώ πολύ. And now we are going to segue from cosmic thoughts to cosmic odes. So it's my great pleasure in this beautiful theatre of Delos to introduce our wonderful musicians, Alexandros Rizopoulos, Zelis Kizilkan, Socrates Sinopoulos, and Diana Tishenko. We have 4 passages of literature, ancient and modern, to read, 4 short passages to give us food for thought in these final few moments. The first passage is taken from a poem by the ancient Greek poet Pindar on the island of Delos from the 5th century BCE. So this is Pindar about Delos. Hail, O heaven-built island, offshoot most desirable to the children of shining-haired Leto, daughter of the sea. Immobile marvel of the broad earth, whom mortals call ΔΕΛΟS, but the blessed gods on Olympus call the far-shining star of the dark blue earth.
Albert Camus, May 1955. At noon, we visit the top of Kynthus, and we look at the surrounding bays, the light, the red and white. The circle of the Cyclades revolves slowly around Delos on the stunning sea, in one movement like a still dance. This confined and at the same time infinite world of islands appears to be the heart of the universe. And in the center of this heart stands Delos and the mountaintop where I am, and from where I can look underneath the straight and pure light of the world at the perfect circle.
From Samantha Harvey's novel Orbital, 2025. Chie is a Japanese astronaut at the International Space Station. Chie looks hard at the photograph. They had it displayed on one of the walls at home. She remembers her mother pointing it out. "Look, Chie-chan, that's me, the day the men went to the moon." Look at these men going to the moon. Be afraid, my child, at what humans can do. Because we know, don't we, what it all means. We know the fanfare and glory of the pioneering human spirit, and we know the wonder of splitting the atom, and we know what these advances can do. Your grandmother knew it only too well when she stepped off the pavement to a sound she didn't recognize and a flash that seemed both distant and so close it might have happened inside her own head. And in her bewilderment came a kernel of knowledge that this might be it. A knowledge that gave rise instantly to a vision of me, her first and only child, which was the last vision she ever experienced. So I am saying to you, Chie, my first and only child, that you might regard in wonder these men walking on the moon. But you must never forget the price humanity pays for its moments of glory, because humanity doesn't know when to stop. It doesn't know when to call it a day. So be wary is what I mean, though I say nothing. Be wary.
Dost cemalin benzer güneşe aya, bakamam yüzüne, yandırır beni. Aşık kül eyler sende gizli yar, sarar sinesine, yandırır beni. Beni sevdalım beni, belalım beni. Seyit Meftuniyem, hayranım sana. acı şu halime, merhamet bana. Kara toprak oldu bize zana. Sarar sine yandırır beni. Beni sevdalım beni, belalım beni. Ezel bahar olmayınca kırmızı gül bitmez imiş. Kırmızı gül bitmeyince dertli bülbül ötmez imiş. Kırmızı gül bitmeyince dertli bülbül ötmez demiş. Bülbül hevestir ötmeye, sarılıp güle yatmaya, bahçıvan gülü satmaya. Gül kadrini bilmez imiş, bahçıvan gülü satmaya. Gül kadrini bilmez imiş. Hayran olur, hayran ol, seyran olur. Bazı insan gafil olur, gafil adem olmaz imiş. Bazı insan gafil olur, gafil Adem olmaz imiş. Seyit Meftuniyem hayran, dost kıymetin bilmez imiş. Dost dosttan ayrılmayınca dost kıymetin bilmez imiş. Dost dosttan ayrılmayınca dost kıymetin bilmez imiş. Dost kıymetin bilmez imiş.
They were warned in their training about the problem of dissonance. They were warned about what would happen with repeated exposure to this seamless earth. You will see, they were told, its fullness, its absence of borders, except those between land and sea. You'll see no countries, just a rolling, indivisible globe which knows no possibility of separation, let alone war. And you'll feel yourself pulled in two directions at once: exhilaration, anxiety, rapture, depression, tenderness, anger, hope, despair. Because of course you know that war abounds and that borders are something that people will kill and die for. While up here there might be the small and distant rucking of land that tells of a mountain range, and there might be a vein that suggests a great river, but that's where it ends. There are no walls, no barriers, no tribes, no war, no corruption, no cause for fear. Before long, a desire takes hold. It's the desire, no, it's the need, fueled by fervour, to protect this huge yet tiny earth, this thing of such miraculous and bizarre loveliness, this thing that has given the poor choice of alternatives so unmistakably home, an unbounded place, a suspended jewel so shockingly, beautifully bright. Can humans not find peace with one another? Can they not find peace with the earth? It's not a fond wish, but a fretful demand. Can we not stop tyrannizing and destroying and ransacking and squandering this one thing on which our lives depend? But they hear the news, and they've lived their lives, and their hope does not make them naive. So what do? What action to take? And what use are words? They're humans with a godly view, and that's the blessing, and also the curse.
çamur. Katibime kolalı da gömlek ne güzel yaraşır. Katip uykudan uyanmış gözleri mahmur. Katip uykudan uyanmış gözleri mahmur. Katip benim ben katibim eline karışır. Katibime kolalı da gömlek ne güzel yaraşır.